Welcome back to Society Case Files. My name is Robert, and today I want to talk about Call of Duty, really. After I did the Battlefield 6 video, I thought it would probably be fair to go back and see how crazy I was, and so I did. And then I saw the Call of Duty Black Ops 7 trailer and all the hate it got, and I thought it'd be a fun topic to discuss. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Otherwise, we'll dive right in. So I've got some footage of some recent matches I played of Black Ops 6, and while I have played it a little more than what I filmed and did better in other games, sort of beginner's luck, really, these maps I wasn't doing quite as well, but I can say that what I talked about in the Battlefield 6 video, where I mentioned that the game was fairly similar to Call of Duty, that was completely inaccurate. It really comes down to the fact that I hadn't played Call of Duty in long enough to have that opinion. So I do take it back. Battlefield has a very different feel. It is much more deliberate. It is a lot more thoughtful, I guess, about keeping it real and keeping it a little bit more grounded. Sure, the non-hardcore mode does require you to load people up a whole bunch. And I guess that it's the same in Call of Duty. When you don't play hardcore, people are bullet spongy. But knowing that, I could say that Call of Duty is just frantic and constantly kinetic. You can run and gun, I guess. In hardcore, you'll probably get torn up pretty quick. And I have heard people over the microphones complaining about camping and stuff. I admit I'll camp a little bit. I'll find a spot, hang out there for a minute, enjoy some rapid kills, and then run off and find another spot or whatever. But I mean, that's kind of how hardcore works in a way. You kind of hold corners and stuff depending on the game mode. I do like that there are so many options, and in Call of Duty you do get matches really quick. Not to say that I didn't get them fairly fast on the Battlefield 6 beta either, though. It really is going to come down to what do you enjoy as far as the movement is concerned, as far as how it looks, the size of the maps. Some of the bigger Call of Duty maps, you have a little bit of the same thing going on with Battlefield, where it's harder to see some of the guys who are most distant taking shots at you. But I felt that Call of Duty is probably a little bit more forgiving for somebody who just wants to hop in and just have a crazy shootout, whereas Battlefield 6 requires a little bit more of a commitment, I'd say. I think that it was also a little more chaotic in a way, just from the tanks and the explosions and stuff. Not to say that Call of Duty isn't chaotic. It is, especially on maps like Nuketown or any of the small ones where it's just pure chaos. But in any event, that's sort of how I felt once I got the chance to play Call of Duty again. And to be very fair, since they are so different, I do see there being a market for both. Now, that said, I have recorded the trailer for Black Ops 7, and it got tons of hate. I mean, we're talking, it has comments galore saying things like, hey, this is a great ad for Battlefield 6, and just tons of terrible, terrible things. Like meaner things than that, obviously. I'm not going to repeat those, but if you want to see people just take harshness to the next level, that's a good place to go, I guess. You can see all the downvotes and the comments that are just insane. Now, are they justified? Well, that depends on how you feel about your shooter games, I guess. When I watched the trailer, I was at first like, what is going on? Because it didn't seem so bad at the very beginning. And then there's the lady who basically uses the Anakin line of we're going to bring peace and security to our new empire, effectively. And then they get gassed, and suddenly all the maps look like Destiny 2. You know, when you're trying to go into the alternate dimension, and like train cars are floating midair, and like streets are sideways and all this stuff. I could see why people would be frustrated with that direction. I don't really care about the campaign modes for Call of Duty. I haven't played a Call of Duty campaign in a long time. They just don't do anything for me. But I can see that if like some of the multiplayer maps have any of those elements, you know, these guys doing these basically super jumps to get to places, and doing wall bounces. I don't know. I mean, it's not the Call of Duty that a lot of folks would necessarily want, as is made evident by all those harsh comments and downvotes. I think they did shoot themselves in the foot. I'm not sure why they did it. I don't remember what it was called, but they had that Call of Duty that was basically in space where like Earth is fighting some terrorist organization from Mars. I remember some of the fighting in that where, you know, there's 0G and bodies are floating and the blood looked pretty cool. I mean, I didn't hate that, but at the same time, it really wasn't very Call of Duty. They were kind of infringing on territory for things like Titanfall or Halo, I guess. And that didn't make a whole lot of sense. I think people who play Call of Duty want a little bit more grounded. I mean, sure, they seem to enjoy sliding around and bouncing or whatever, but they still, I think, want the background to relatively be realistic, I think. I don't know. I'd like to hear from anybody who really loves Call of Duty about things like the crazy Beavis and Butthead skins or the stuff that just really pulls you out of it being even remotely a modern day shooter. You know, some of these skins that you see people using, or even some of the weapons. I've been killed by ray guns and all kinds of crazy stuff. But what do you guys think of the direction of Call of Duty as they try to sort of infringe on Fortnite's success by offering some wild skins and some different perspectives on how to play? To me, it seems like they can't really stay in their lane. And they have a big lane. They make plenty of money. But somebody there is like, you know what? Let's just tread all over the place. Hey, this year Halo kind of games are very popular. Let's see what we can take from their pool of players. And then they try and take from Fortnite. And I don't think that it really works. I don't think Fortnite players are like, oh my God, finally Call of Duty is exactly what I want. I'm going to go jump over and try it. I don't see that being the case at all. I don't see people who love Halo jumping over there either. Maybe with some friends who are like, hey, we're all going to play Call of Duty, but just in general, doesn't seem likely. So, I'd love to hear what you think. What I find most odd is that Call of Duty already has a direct competitor that they need to sort of match or exceed the offerings for in Battlefield. So I think that their divided attention to try and steal players from other things like I said, Destiny or Warframe or whatever they're trying to do. I think that's why they got all those downvotes. I think that's why people are like, what are you guys doing? This is not the Call of Duty we want. And had they focused more on, I don't know, making it a gritty military shooter again, they might have had more of a chance to not offend so many people who watched their trailer. There was, as I said in the other video, that guy who works for Activision who said that Call of Duty was going to lose to Battlefield 6 this year and that they would learn from it and the next Call of Duty would be better. Now, as far as I know, and I don't know if this is still true, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I seem to recall that they had basically two studios always working on Call of Duty, and they just leapfrogged each other. So one company puts out a game in 2025, the other company does 2026, and so on, and it just bounces back and forth until, you know, whatever, until finally it fails or they finally have to do something new. But it's interesting that they would talk about the next time they'll do better, because that would mean that whatever company is working on the 2026 version of Call of Duty would have to really change their focus and start to implement something different. But I don't think they know what that would be until Battlefield 6 comes out and they get a real good look at what is delivered. I'm sure that the beta does not reveal everything. Like I said, it doesn't even have a hardcore mode. I did see that some of the old Battlefield games do. I didn't remember that. Even as much as I loved Bad Company, that was so long ago, I don't really remember anything but tremendous fondness and nostalgia, which is kind of a danger when you start talking about how great another game was. Sometimes you go back to it and you're like, ooh, that was not as good as I thought. Anyway, with all that said, I think that I had more fun playing Call of Duty Black Ops 6 than I did with Battlefield 6, but I think that Battlefield 6 was better, which is funny. When I say I had more fun, it's just that I stood more of a chance. The maps were smaller, they're more kinetic. It's a little cheesy, kind of a little bit more arcadey. And Battlefield 6 had higher demands, and I couldn't meet them because I sucked. And so without the desire to get better at the game, I think that you would not necessarily have as much fun with Battlefield 6. It's going to be a commitment to get good at it. Of course, you know, maybe you're amazing at it already and you're having a great time. But considering that I've seen a lot of reviews where people are complaining about the bullet sponge thing, it's going to take some people a little bit of time. However, I believe that it will probably be worth it at the end. I think it'll be more fulfilling than playing a Call of Duty map. I think that Call of Duty is kind of the candy of first-person shooters, and Battlefield 6 is more of a meal. So you might have some temporary enjoyment out of Call of Duty. It might seem simpler and all that stuff, but ultimately it won't be quite as rewarding as becoming good at Battlefield 6 and contributing to your team in a meaningful way. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear what you think. Have you tried the Battlefield 6 beta? Have you been playing Call of Duty recently enough to make a good comparison? I'd like to know what your opinion about the two is and how they relate. And if you think I'm completely off or if you even remotely agree. Anyway, this is Robo with Society Case File signing off.